So this is about paper plate weaving, and you want to use a strong Chinet plate. I happen to have made this measured cheat sheet for you to use, but what's important to know is an odd number of cuts. This happens to have 21. So you can mark 21 spots. I like to take the one that's opposite and make an extra mark on that one, and you'll see why. So I have a star from where I start and a little eyeball for where I put my first thread. And then you take your scissors and you're just going to cut through the lip of the plate all the way around. You need about 6.5 yards of yarn to get around a standard 10-inch plate. And I start by just putting the end of my yarn on the back of the plate, and I use a little piece of tape to keep it in place. And I'm going to go in where that star is, and I'm going to go across to where I put that silly eyeball shape. And then I'm just going to keep moving to the right at the top and the left at the bottom. You can see how it looks on the back. And I will make sure I don't skip any of the slits that I cut, and I will go all the way around the plate. You want to be firm with this. You don't want those to be loose, but you don't want to pull so tightly that the plate ends up bending. So just a nice taut stretch across. You're going to end up, because you remembered to use an odd number, with the end coming right into the middle of the front of your plate. And you're just going to go directly across from where you came in, and probably going underneath that one with the star. You are just going to go all the way under and back out. Doesn't really matter. You're just like taking an extra loop. However you do it is fine. And then you're going to start weaving, and you're just going to go under, over, just like any other time that you've woven. This is the best part about having an odd number of strings, or warp threads as they're called, the things that look like spokes of a wheel. Because if you have an odd number, you never have to keep track of where you are. You just go under every other one, and it ends up working out mathematically. So once you've taken a trip around, you can begin to tighten your yarn and just cinch it right up to the middle. And then you keep going. I'm just going to speed up my film a little bit here. Every time I make one trip around my plate, I tend to tighten it up a little bit. You can decide how tight you want to make it. I was so excited to use black yarn so you could see it against the white plate that I hadn't considered that you won't really be able to see what's happening in the middle. But it looks pretty cool. So I'm working around and I say to myself, gosh, I think I'm ready for a new color. So I'll take this yarn and I will snip it off a couple of inches from the center. I'll get my new color ready, and you can decide how long a piece you want to weave with. I tend to do something in the 3 to 4 foot neighborhood. And then this is a square knot. I put my old one on top of my new one, like I'm tying my shoes. And then I do it again. I put the old color on top of the new color, like I'm tying my shoes the second time, and I pull. That is a square knot. You are going to be looking at the back of your weaving the whole time that you're doing this project. So you may ask yourself, what is that ugly knot going to look like when I take my weaving off? And the cool thing is, you're just going to leave it right on top where you can see it. And when you cut the weaving off of your loom, it will be hidden in the back. So I'm going to take those two little ends from my knot and just pull them out towards me and cinch in this new blue, just like all the other colors that I'll be using. And I've sped up my film again. I'm not that fast a weaver. And I will keep going around. And I will change colors as often as I would like. And I will just do that same square knot that I did before. And I will keep going around and around and around. Let's talk about how to keep going and change colors. I could make this wider, and just for the sake of this video, I'm going to stop. Let's talk about how to take it off. So I'm going to flip the whole thing over, and I'm going to push my fingers up through the middle and take my scissors and just cut everything off. And it'll just kind of pop open when I cut it. There it goes. I can take off my piece of tape, and I will flip the whole loom back over, and I'll leave my warp strings, the little spokes, right in those slits. I'll take them out two at a time, and here we go again with our square knot that you've been tying. So I'll put the right one over the left and the left one over the right, and gently bring it right up to the edge of the weaving. And I will go around the plate and keep doing this same knot, because I want to make sure that my threads that I've been weaving with, those are called the weft threads, I want to make sure that they don't get loose. So I'm going to speed up my film. I'm going to work around, and you notice that I'm going to get close to that blue end that's just hanging there, and I'm going to stop headed in that direction, and I'm going to twist around and go the other way, and I'll show you why. I was thinking of speeding this up, but I'm just going to leave it in real time so you can tell just about how long it takes. It's starting to get pretty loose because I've pulled most of it off of my plate loom. And as I get near the place where I ended with the blue thread, I'm going to tie carefully. And now I'm going to make sure that that blue thread has been woven all the way to the very end. So I have two more of my black threads to tie together. And as you've probably guessed, I'm now going to take the last black thread that's loose, and I'm going to tie it to the blue thread. And that way I have tied off my last weaving, and I know that everything's going to be secure. And now I can lift it right away from the paper plate, and it's loose. It's kind of a fun looking thing when you first take it off. It reminds me a lot of a jellyfish. I have a lot of static electricity on this day that I was making the film, but you can just imagine a jellyfish swimming along. You've got some choices as to how you want to finish it, and so let's talk about what those are. You actually have 4 choices, and I'll show them to you. One of them is that you can take your scissors and you can trim these ends off so that they're just nice and short. The other thing that you can do is you can do some macrame. You can ask your grandmother if she was alive in the 70s what macrame is. But it is more of the square knot tying, and yet you just tie the ones together that were next to each other before. You can look it up on the internet. You can look up macrame. And it just makes for a pretty decoration. It almost looks like netting. So that can be a pretty way to end your ends. The other thing you can do is you can take an embroidery needle or a large plastic needle that you might have for crafts, and you can thread your end onto the needle and then pick up your weaving on the back side where those ugly knots are, and you can just gently push your weaving right between the threads so that it goes right up in there. You pull it snugly and then you can trim it off. And that way you're kind of burying all those ends up into the weaving. You might want to do this if you're making a coaster for someone to set a damp glass on. Maybe you want to do that. So again, I'm just sneaking up in between those weft threads and burying the end in there. So that's your third choice. And then your fourth choice is just to leave them long, like a jellyfish. I even was thinking you could make 2 of these and sew them together and make a ball. So have fun with this.